that sword you wield. The High will sing that I must escape the kiss of its steel, as it is wholly tainted by the heresy of its bearer. The Great Ones, from the eternal processions, demand that I should battle until I draw my dying breath. The Three. The High Voices proclaim that your execution cannot be delayed, and so I fear that my penance is far from over. Not while their voices still echo, not while your silence endures.
Well, Tyler, we made it. This is 1 year.
Oh, I thought you just meant made it to the recording booth after that little hiatus we took.
Oh, the surprise hiatus that we took?
It wasn't a surprise. We planned it all along. This was...
Yes, let's...
Hey, you remember in the last episode when you mentioned how the next episode wasn't going to be, or was going to be the anniversary, and I said, no, because the next one will come out in the middle of the month. Happy anniversary!
Yeah. Now, I will back us up. I mean, that's our first little break that we've had in the year. And I mean, we still put out as many episodes for 2 a month. This is episode 25.
Well, okay. Mathematically, yes. And also,
yes.
We have been consistent with a release for at least every 2 weeks for a year straight. So I think we earned a little bit of a break, especially too when we're coming back strong.
We got a little bit of a flack.
Yeah. Well, dude, it makes me happy.
It does. It does. It means that, thank you for listening. This is the Optional Boss Podcast, episode 25, where we are finally talking about Blasphemous. This is going to be a Optional Boss Presents episode where we talk about one individual game. We are your hosts, Josh and Tyler. Happy 1 year anniversary, Tyler. How are you?
I'm pretty swell, that's for sure. I'm excited to talk about this game in depth, at least in depth in our rambly way that we have so trademarked of ourselves. And I'm doing pretty swell. I've been quite locked into a very daunting gaming experience lately. I finally took that plunge that is Elden Ring, and everything I said about why I shouldn't be playing it is true. It's too big. There's too much to go on, and yet I can't stop.
It's a good time. Like, you'll get burnt out a little bit on it, but you still get enjoyment from it.
It's something else. Now, that said, as someone who has, I think I could say more than dip my toe. I'm about knee deep in the Souls from Software world of games, and I gotta say, though I am really enjoying this, I think I prefer it more when it's not open world.
I could understand that because things can be a little more tightly knit.
But
I mean, Dark Souls 1, if you look at the world, it's very tightly knit and it all kind of comes around on itself, right? So
it's also one of my favorite maps in gaming. But all that aside, it doesn't make this any worse. I think it's just one of those things where it feels too big for me to fully appreciate, because it does still have that very awesome, intimate, design work where when you're in the more centralized areas that feel more like proper Souls dungeons, they are still very good, and the exploration is just top-notch in it. But it sometimes feels like too much of a good thing, you know?
It's the chocolate chip cookie analogy I always use.
Yeah.
If you continue eating chocolate chip cookies nonstop, you will eventually get a stomachache.
Yeah.
No matter how much you love those cookies.
But that said, I'm about 60 hours deep and still happy.
That's a good chunk of time.
Yeah, and I'm still happy to keep playing it. I'm not going to drop it. I do want to finish it, but it has been eating up a lot of my gaming time. But I have to make an honorable mention to the fact that we've talked about this a little bit here and there on the podcast. They finally did something with F-Zero, kinda. And Nintendo released F-Zero 99 on the Switch Online, and it is stupidly addictive. This is actually my first 99 game, and
Is it really?
yeah, and I've dabbled a
Okay,
little bit
so
into. Oh well, all right.
should we count Mario 35 as a 99 game? Because
I
it was
never
still in
played
that
it.
style. You
I
didn't play
never
that,
tried
but
it. No,
are we counting it?
I consider it a 99 game. Yes.
Okay.
It still falls under the let's take a game that is primarily a single player experience and somehow turn it into a battle royale. And
Yep.
yeah, no, the F-Zero is absolutely great. The fact that it's one, the Super Nintendo F-Zero, which is just going to win me over aesthetically in all of
Of
its
course.
presentation, but it's a game I'd
Nostalgia,
always.
even though you didn't play it.
Yeah, well, I
Play it
have
much.
played F-Zero a good handful, and it's one of those games that like I wish I was better at because I want to like it, but they have added enough. Like I don't think it actually plays like SNES F-Zero like 1-to-1, but it still
Sure.
feels like a SNES game. But it just proves the point that this deserved to be multiplayer and just never got it. So this has been really cool. I don't know how long Nintendo's going to support it, but it's been a nice thing to, just I'll hop in, do a couple races, and then I'll go back to exploring the absolutely massive world in Elden Ring. So that's been pretty much taken up a lot of my gaming time lately. How about yourself? How have you been?
Well, first off, I do need to try F-Zero 99. It's I've dove into pretty much everyone aside from Pac-Man. I enjoy hopping in for the occasional game of Tetris 99. I'm no good at it, but I mean, I'd rather sit down and play Tetris Effect Connected because that thing is damn trippy. If you partake in a bit of the green, I highly suggest that.
I do, and I hate Tetris.
But you should try it.
I'm
Honestly,
I'm willing to
it's
try
wacky.
Tetris Effect just because it sounds so wild.
It's just a trip.
Yeah.
It's a trip.
And good music.
And good music.
Yeah.
So since our last recording, I've I dove into Dark Souls 3 pretty heavily to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to platinum it on PlayStation.
You jumped in too
And then
heavily.
as I was most of the way through, then it's like, oh, this is going to take forever to do. But I grinded through. I got the platinum trophy. My head hurts. I think I posted something on our socials at Optional Boss PC on Instagram and Twitter of me literally in the reflection of the TV holding my forehead like, why the fuck did I do this? But then I dove into the Messenger. And I've dove into Messenger before. Like it's a fantastic game. We've talked about it before in I think last episode actually.
Did we bring up
the music's
Messenger?
great.
Oh, we did bring up the Messenger. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
And then there's a little so I beat that. I didn't 100% or anything this time. I wanted to go down a trip because I wanted some of the story bits and some of the familiarity before I dove into this next game, which is Sea of Stars.
I
who's
cannot
made by
wait.
Sabotage Studio. And so same makers as The Messenger. It is a same universe, and I can't give any spoilers. I'm not going to give any spoilers because if you are an RPG fan who likes Super Mario RPG and Chrono Trigger, there's the mention. This is a love letter to both those games. But I'm picking up a lot of the similarities and some of the references that were in The Messenger in Sea of Stars now. And it's just it's one of those what's that meme? It's Leonardo DiCaprio going, hey, hang on, and he's pointing like
I recognize that thing.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Do the thing.
So
Messenger.
Sea of Stars, it's a slow start, admittedly. Like its whole storyline doesn't feel as impactful. It seems kind of slow. But then it really starts picking up and it just becomes a really, really good time. And it's like, I understand why it started slow because they had a lot of stuff to set up.
I'm very excited. I did back this game and they promised
And I tried to
me-
find your grave, and holy shit, there's a lot of backer graves. Oh my god.
Yeah, I figured it would be a lot, but I didn't expect it would be like 25,000.
Yeah, it's between 25,000 and 30,000 different grave sites that you have to go inspect. And there's 84 per room. so you got to keep going in and out of rooms to try and find them.
Oh, that's daunting. I'm gonna have to try to figure out that code they sent me to expedite the trip to my grave, because I do want to see myself immortalized in this indie project that just seemed too exciting not to get. Even though I only really backed it for the physical copy, but it was also like, you get a grave with this tier too. It was like, sick, immortalized in this game I'm excited for. Neat.
Yep.
By spending money.
So aside from that, a couple good game releases that it's a few episodes old now, but what we're most anticipating in 2023. That was back in January or something.
Yeah.
They're starting to come out. Sea of Stars was one of them. Also, Liza P just came out this past week.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 2 weeks by the time you listen to this. And based on today's topic, Blasphemous 2, which I have yet to dive into, which sounds kind of crazy, but also at the same point, I've been doing a lot of action-heavy games. I wanted something a little slower pace that I can just dive into for a couple hours here and there, instead of being like in-depth action focused. Also, I did not want to get anything confused with today's episode.
I was actually going to say one of the reasons why, beside Elden Ring, even if Elden Ring wasn't part of the picture, I'm kind of glad I haven't touched Blasphemous 2 yet, because I wanted to go into this topic without any influence from the second game hanging over it. It's nice that we can just discuss it as our experiences with the first game, which, it is a doozy. So,
are you about ready to get into it? Is our little pre-ramble? We haven't had any posts on social media. We haven't had anything like that. If there are messages, we honestly haven't had a chance to actually look at them. We've been very, very busy in our real lives. So hopefully we aren't missing anything. If so, we'll get to you next week or next episode, hopefully. But Tyler, you ready to go into some Blasphemous? Should I cue up some music?
I think that's a good idea.
All right, and we'll be right back. So Blasphemous, the company that made it was the Game Kitchen, which honestly a fantastic game, fantastic name. I first heard about this, I want to say it was in an E3 back in 2016, and I just remember seeing some of the the trailer and the pixel art was just really, really impressive. More so for the time. It sounds weird to say impressive pixel art gets better with age, but this game is very pretty, and you don't actually notice the depth of its story until you really dive into it. But 2016, I want to say. And then it was delayed for a year because it was supposed to be out in 2017, I believe. I could have a lot of this wrong. I'm trusting my memory here. But then it finally came out in 2018, 2019?
I think it was released in 2018, yes.
So, and then it's funny because I never touched it. And then it wasn't until I got my Switch edition, then I said, okay, I got to dive into it. And this was before I was really into a Dark Souls phase. Not that it's really Souls-like by any means, but
it has a good chunk of inspiration from Souls, though.
Yes, especially with its story and its lore.
Yes.
And by that I mean, for anyone who doesn't know how Souls does their lore, it's a lot of item descriptions which match up with other things going on in the world. Its dialogue could be a little cryptic until you actually start understanding what the world is about. Do you remember when you first learned about Blasphemous?
I couldn't say the specifics of it, but I do know that it was much. It was love at first sight. I know that. I saw that pixel art, and also the fact that this game was being published by Team 17. And Team 17 is a publisher that I have known and adored their releases pretty much since the mid 90s with Worms. They've always been one of those smaller companies that is the name that I've grown to trust. They've grown to become quite the publisher now. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't even know if they make games anymore. It's just publishing.
It's been a while since they made Worms, and it wasn't great, but that's a sidetrack from the fact that I saw this game called Blasphemous, and it just was too pretty to not pay attention to, and I found out. So, before we get into this
It kind
game,
of came from nowhere,
but
really.
as a lot of indie games did in
I mean,
the early
true,
Switch
true.
life as well, though, right? Because something about, like, I'm much more prone to paying attention to it if it's getting a console release. This is something I can admit. And
Right.
this game has gotten 2 or 3 different physical releases now.
I think it's just 2.
There was the
'Cause-
limited run and the retail, and then I believe because it got another content update, it might have released once more.
I don't think it did. I think it just came out with because it's had a few free DLCs that have come alongside it. Stir of Dawn, Wounds of Eventide, and I don't know if there was another one or not.
I think it was just the 2, but the one thing that this is an unfortunate piece of the era we live in with updates is that the final update that it got was actually very crucial to the plot. Because
Absolutely, because
it didn't have a true ending until the last DLC.
well, it had more of a cliffhanger ending, and that's another thing I'll point out right now. We're going to try and veer away from spoilers till the second half of the episode, and then we can dive into spoiler territory. So
Well-
if you haven't played it and our episode has intrigued you to give it a chance, don't listen to the second half. We'll give you plenty of warnings as well.
Yes, but to be known that this is going to be a much deeper dive than our typical talks of games on the broader scale. And so yeah, out in 2018, this is you could say Metroidvania. It does follow a lot of the similar trappings of a Metroidvania when you have a big explorative world and the map structure is quite similar, but it's very much its own thing within this category. It felt funny enough, and it does get a mode to reflect this a little bit later, but it feels more like something like the original Castlevania games where it was more difficult but precise combat and platforming.
Yes, and that's actually a mode that I have actually stayed away from, and I really should give it a shot. Like, it's only in New Game Plus that you can access the different game modes aside from your standard. Here's your health, here's your potions, go at it. There's the mode that you're referring to that's very Castlevania, where it gives you like so many hits.
Yes,
It's
you
not
get
like
health
a-
pips instead of a life bar, and yeah, it makes the game significantly more challenging and changes a couple other things too. Like this
Mhm.
game has the whole Souls-like kind of thing where all the enemies are dead until you stay at a save point for recovery. And in the classic, like Castlevania mode, they respawn as soon as you leave the room. So it does
Right.
do quite a few ways to tweak it in the more classic. And we can get into the bonus modes further later on. But to describe...
Yes, because we will have to
how-
dive into New Game Plus.
Well, we've done it once or twice each, so it's definitely
Yes.
worth a dabble. But I think the best
So
way
to access
explain...
the DLC, you need to be in New Game Plus. So you had to at least beat it.
Oh, that's right. You did need to have New Game Plus for any of the DLC.
Yes, you did.
Oh, they make you work for it, but it's such good time working
It's
for it.
it's worth it because it does change quite a bit.
So, do we go into the presentation of it, or should we talk about just how it feels first?
Let's go into a bit of the story.
Let's set the
And-
stage.
Yeah, set the stage. We'll go into some mechanics, and then we will do some final touches, and then we'll go into a spoiler section,
Okay.
and start-
Well,
spoiling the shit out of everything.
do you want to take the wheel? Do you want me to take the wheel on the opening of this, or prior to,
So-
I should say?
All honestly, the game doesn't start off, and I'll let you, because you just read the comic about an hour ago, so you have a better memory of it than I do.
I did.
But
yes.
the actual beginning of the game starts in a comic that comes with the game.
Well, okay. The
And
beginning of the.
you
Well, no,
don't
also-
need to read the comic.
But I'll set the stage with the comic because it is important. So first, to set the stage of the world of Blasphemous, it takes place in a setting called Custodia, and Custodia is pretty much a massive city-sized church town. And if you hadn't guessed with a name like Blasphemous, this game is incredibly highly rooted in theology. So to set the stage, several years ago, the people of the world worshipped something called the miracle, which is basically a god allegory. And the miracle would punish, and that was its form of showing that it existed, essentially. And these punishments could range in any way from wild deformities to turning into monstrous creatures. It has all sorts of wild effects. And so there was a person whose name that I do not recall, but we will call him Jesus Stand-In. He one day prayed for all of the world's guilt to be put upon him. And so this divine miracle then started to turn this boy into a tree, slowly and surely. And this tree basically became the symbol of this religion. So, we have our base foundation. Worship
The
Jesus
three knots.
tree. Yes, the 3 knots. And this was known as the first miracle, I believe. So, then I guess we would have the whole thing where they built the Mother of Mothers, this gigantic church, and the Pope of this church, known as Escobar, thought he stopped hearing the voices of the miracle. So he turned his throne and his back on all of his parishioners and the entirety of Custodia. And everyone, of course, at this point is wondering, like, what? We've lost our leader, basically. And so...
Well, pretty much. He turned his back on his congregation.
He did, because he thought he was no longer favored by the miracle. And as a punishment / a way of proving that the miracle existed, this is very much a story of God works in mysterious ways. Escobar, the Pope of this world, essentially, his body started to decay and rot, and his blood became oilish and sticky like sap. And this was the miracle basically proving that it existed. And so he took it upon himself to basically be like the new messiah of this world. And amidst all this tree, this first miracle of this Jesus boy who turned into a tree, began to just start burning. And it burned with a massive ash that rained all over the land. And it ended up killing a whole bunch of people. And a bunch ended up being deformed and turned into monsters by this horrible event. And
Well,
so...
not just that, it created a giant pile of ash to which Escobar's throne sat upon, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the congregation wanted to be the next Escobar. They wanted to be the next son of the miracle, as they were come to known, Escobar being the first son of the miracle. And as they tried to climb the ash, the weight of their guilt pulled them down through it. And it would start causing deformities on them, turning them into vile monsters that now roamed the lands of Custodia. And no one actually had a guilt-free conscience to be able to sit upon the throne and actually make it up to the throne.
So, I'd say it not a long time, but an age after all of this happened. I hope you're all hanging on to us with this. The game opens with a priestess pounding an effigy of the Jesus tree into her chest as she starts speaking a prayer. And then eventually she turns to stone, and this effigy of their Lord turns into a sword that was piercing her. We'll come back to this. So,
yes, because it kills her, and then she turns to stone, right?
Yeah, it's almost
it
like...
pierces through her heart.
Yeah, this is the will of the miracle. It creates this sword. And so, now we join what would become our protagonist, and he is being led by what did you say, a prophet of the miracle or a scholar of the miracle?
A scholar of the miracle.
Okay.
Deus Dias.
Yes, there's a lot. This game is rooted in Spanish theology and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of names. This game actually has an incredible Spanish dub that even if you don't know it, it sounds nice to listen to. But moving on. So yes, this scholar of the miracle is leading a nameless, I guess you'd say like a nameless warrior who belongs to a church called the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow. And they have taken an oath of silence in the name of the miracle. And
That is
first
their
of all,
penance.
I just want to say that wait, I haven't got to his name yet, but then I'll ramble about that. So he's led and given a full exposition on basically this is why you exist. The miracle has essentially burdened these lands, but someone will also be chosen by the miracle to become the new first son, and we believe that to be you, and he guides you to this priestess who is pounding this effigy that became the sword, and then you pull it from her, wielding the mighty mea culpa, to which you are then given the name the Penitent One.
And the statue was the kneeling stone.
Yes. And then along comes someone from a similar but different church. I don't think it ever actually says, but we meet a character called...
Of the
Does it
Rapt
say?
Chrysanta of Rapt Agony.
Yes.
And her whole purpose is to protect Escobar.
Yep.
And the actual turned throne. So when the Penitent One, the main character, rises up with the mea culpa, which is a representation of Custodia's guilt, she takes him down and gives him his first kneeling, as it's called, and says,
Yep.
if you actually were chosen by the miracle, you will rise again.
Then get your second kneeling.
Yes.
Surprisingly badass. And then, this is where our game opens. You arise from a pile of corpses similar to yourself.
Yep, essentially your brotherhood has been killed.
Yep, you are the last of yours working the will of the miracle, which is also somehow working against you. It's very, very peculiar. And yeah, this is where we open up. And
this is where the actual game starts, right? And I guess with that kind of set the stage, your whole job, your whole role in this is to take place of Escobar's throne.
He's a false prophet, and you are a true prophet, essentially.
Yes, because when Escobar died, when he was turned into a tree, essentially that's what happened.
Yeah.
And burned, he was brought back by the miracle as a crimson form. And this whole thing was because they still needed a father of not a father. The father is the Twisted One, who was the boy.
He's the first son of the miracle.
He's the first son of the miracle, and they still needed someone to be taken place of the throne, even though it was turned.
Yeah.
So to keep the religion alive, your whole penance is to rise up, face the challenges the miracle has put in place, and take over the throne to bring peace to the world.
And yeah, we open up in the Church of the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow, and you get up from the pile, and you make your way to the right. First thing in this game, bam, boss fight.
Boss fight. And it's so funny thinking the first time I played this, I had no real experience with quote unquote difficult games. And this thing actually gave me a challenge. Now I'm looking at it, it's like, I don't understand how I actually had a challenge with this. It was cake.
Just crushes you the first time. So your first boss is called the Warden of the Silent Sorrow. So basically, it seems to be this giant who is protecting this church of corpses you came from. And yeah, he just comes from the sky and just crushes down at you with what looks like a giant candelabra in his hand. And he's large, and he's intimidating, and he's actually surprisingly easy. But he will catch you off guard, and you will just... The game gets real right away.
It teaches you the controls really quick.
It does. And it all teaches the basic mechanics of the fact that you can slide under things. You got to hit with that sword, which I just got to say, oh, it sounds so good to hit things with that sword. And
the cinematics, we've already said that the pixel art is like pretty on point. It's really, really nice looking. The cinematics are all pixelated, and to see that scale of pixel art and have it look as good as it does threw me off at first.
Oh, it's an absolute work of art. And
in blasphemous fashion, this can be a gory game.
Well, the beautiful thing is when you do finally overcome this first boss, you get that super satisfying, the entire screen goes red except for a silhouette of you cutting through the boss. And
yes.
oh, what does it say when you kill bosses? It's surprisingly badass, but I also think it's in Spanish.
Oh, yes, it is in Spanish. I forget, to be honest.
Something Requiem or something like that. I can't remember.
Eternum Requiem?
Something along those lines. But either way, it's very cool. And then a cutscene plays, which is very rare, but this is the most metal thing ever.
Oh, God.
Where
And I don't even know if it explains what it's doing, like the whole idea behind it. Does it?
I don't care. It's cool as fuck. So you just get this short cutscene of you cut open into the giant that you just killed, and a whole bunch of blood pours from its wound as you fill your helmet up with it, and then just dump it on your head, and then blood pours from the tears of the helmet on the face, and it's just so fucking metal. Oh my god! And as soon as that
for the
cutscene
actual
played,
character design,
oh,
that's something that we should have said, is like the whole helmet that this the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrows wear, so in turn the main character that you're controlling wears, is like a spiral with thorns on it.
yes,
And you
tall
don't
and
actually see the
pointed.
character's face.
Nope.
It's all like this giant metal helmet
Well,
that covers the face too.
He's not to speak or to be to known. He's of the silent Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow. His penance is not to speak, which is the same with Chrysanta, how her helmet has hands over the eyes because
Because she had to give up sight.
Yes, and I thought that was this game is just full of really cool details. But yeah, it has a tall spiraling helmet, which is to attune yourself to the miracle. And some people might see this and think it's racist imagery, but it's actually not. And I will leave that at that.
No. Yes, if you know much about, because this game takes a lot of favors and liberties with Christianity in Spain.
It's amazing how how heavily rich this game is in theological influence. None of it has to do with actual real world religion. Like they made up their entire faith.
Absolutely not.
And of course, it's allegories left and right, yeah, but it's not the same thing. And I think they did a really good job of doing that.
They did a really good job of coming up with their own thing and spin on it.
Yeah,
to tell a story.
I really liked it, but yeah, you dunk the bucket of blood on your head, the bucket being your helmet, and now we're really ready to get into Blasphemous.
Yes, and I mean, let's be honest, the healing in this game, you get bile flasks, which are just flasks full of blood that you slam on your face.
It's right from Dark Souls, but also in Dark Souls you drink it, you don't just smash it against your face. And it's the most, everything about the penitent one is like, he is so fucking badass.
He doesn't give a fuck.
No, even when he
just
dies,
cares about completing his penance.
Yep. No, he's very straightforward, and I don't know why it's really funny. I think it's just because of the April Fool's thing that they put out, but just when you're idling for a bit and then just some blood starts leaking out of the tears of the mess, he just puts it back in.
Just wipes it off like it's an actual tears.
It's like a minor inconvenience. Yep. This is, excuse me, I'm leaking again. But yeah, so you leave.
Gross.
You leave the Church of the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow and you make your way out into Custodia, and you traverse some swampity swamps where there's ghouls and
wheel skeletons.
The enemies
skeletons
are really cool in this
holding
game,
wheels.
Yeah, I just don't know how to describe them. Like, are they religious fanatics who have just been, I guess, mutated?
Well, some of them were swallowed up by
nuts?
the ash, right?
Yeah. So you have
and the ones who didn't get who swallowed up by the ash, but they didn't transform, were hung up, and they can be found all along throughout the game. Is they're just tied up, like almost dismembered human beings that are on their last life, like hung up to posts and religious symbols in the background.
Crucifixion.
Yeah, but not just crucifixion, but yeah,
they hang them up for the birds.
Yeah, pretty much.
The enemy variety in this game is absolutely wild. But this first area just kind of has a little more humanoid guys. They just seem like you'd almost think cultists and religious fanatics. But
Well, a couple of them look like nuns.
ones that attack you
Nuns
with
with
wagon
knives.
wheels. The nuns with knives are hilarious because I know the first time I played this game, it just slowly walks towards you. It's like Tonberry. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, it's going to get close to me and it's going to do a swipe. No, just walks into you with knife out forward and you're just dumb enough to stand there and let it happen. And that's your first basic enemy in the game, and then you get to the guys with the wheels, and then you start experimenting with this game's parry and counter system.
Yes.
And
which is just wonderful. It's easy to pull off. And once you start getting used to the parry, this game actually becomes from difficult to pretty simple in that sense. It's still difficult, but
it makes it super satisfying.
Oh, it does. Just the clash that it makes when you get that parry off and that slice back afterwards, the counterattack, is just so satisfying.
And when you pull off this parry, a lot of the times you are rewarded with this game's most unnecessary and awesome mechanic. There is what would be, I guess, your equivalent in something like Doom, like glory kills, and they are the most brutal fucking things I've ever seen.
Oh God.
Oh,
there's some really good ones, like the guys who just or the women that go up to you with the giant shields.
Oh, and you just step on the shield and crush them?
You just step on the shield and crush them.
Oh, it's so good.
This game is gory.
What is it with the wheel guy? Do you just pick up his wheel and smash it into him?
Yeah. Essentially, you kick him on the ground, grab his wheel, and slam it into his skull and crushing it.
I think one of the coolest ones, and I'm jumping ahead a bit, but there's this enemy later that's like a giant stone statue with a casket on its back, and you end up knocking it to the ground. You just punch through this stone casket to pull the corpse out of it, to slam that into the stone giant to kill it.
Yeah.
The penitent one only seeks violence and acquisition of guilt.
Yes.
Which is actually plot relevant.
Violence and guilt to cover up and hold the weight of sins.
Yeah. So, well, no, we'll save that until we get into the actual spoiler part. But
yep.
Yeah. So you make your way past the swamp to your first little town known as Albero, and
well, not quite, because before you get there, you come across a nice little guy, you could say, called Deo Gracias.
Oh, elf on a shelf.
Yes. So this guy, he's wicked looking, honestly. Like, I remember the first time I saw him, I was just...
He's tall,
I don't want to say blown
pointy,
away, but just...
And he's incredibly detailed.
He looks like an elf. Incredibly detailed. His arms are tied with rope to his sides, and he's just there so they can only hold, like, a sheet of paper. And he's just a messenger of the miracle, and his face is just a giant knot.
Yeah.
Rope in a circle a bunch of times.
Yeah, his face has been bound.
Yes, absolutely.
Very polite guy.
Very polite guy. His penance is to guide whoever the miracle chooses on what the penitent one needs to do to take over the throne. And he tells you about Escobar. Tells you how the Mother of Mothers, the church that Escobar is in at the top of, the door is sealed and will only open since the whole burning of the tree once 3 humiliations has happened. And these 3 humiliations were caused by the miracle in order to prevent anyone from getting to Escobar.
Do you remember what they were called?
The humiliation of attrition, compunction,
and contrition.
Contrition.
Yes. So, do you know what these words mean?
I did. I'm drawing a blank right now.
So,
because I know one of the first times I played this, I looked it up because I was more curious about it.
So attrition is essentially to do something by force and take something by violent means. And contrition and compunction are along the lines of feeling remorse and guilt for what one does.
Right.
Yeah. So I will be honest, the plot of this game definitely goes over my head, but in a way that I still kind of understand.
Yes.
But all the same, yeah. So
It's taken some videos of some lore videos to have it all pointed out, because playing the game just similar to Dark Souls, if you aren't reading everything and understanding everything right when you come across it, you're gonna have a hard time actually following.
you're just playing the game and you're just hitting stuff with your sword, which sounds so good.
Which it does sound good, and it's a good time, and admittedly that's how my first time went, but
Yeah.
learning the story and then linking it up with the game, oh, it's just so much better.
Oh no, the first time I played this game, it was very much okay. I still
I
had
had
a
no
great
idea what the
time,
hell was going
but
on.
yeah, I'm not about to tell you what was going on. So yes, this Deo Gracias delivers you essentially the plot. He gets it kind of going for you, and this is where the game gets video gamey, where it's like you have three MacGuffins: one north, one middle, one south. Go.
Yes.
And this is something I think Blasphemous does really well for its quote unquote Metroidvania style. Is it's very open in the beginning.
Yes.
So
And
which way?
that's one thing. It's a Metroidvania, but it's really not.
No.
Metroidvania light.
So which way do you normally go when you are making your choice?
So I've gone a different way each time almost.
Okay. My
So the
first
first
time
time I
I
played,
went
I went
up.
up to the charred visage.
Yeah, that was the first way I went.
But mainly now I go down toward what's his name? Ten Piedid.
Oh, see, I usually do him last, which is funny because I think he's supposed to be done first.
I think so, yeah.
But lately I've been going down into the sewers.
Okay.
Yeah, and the
And
sewers
going for
are
those, oh god.
Treagostias.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think
Three sisters. I hate them
yeah.
all.
Oh, sometimes it's the easiest boss fight, sometimes it's the hardest. But I'd say we start with Ten Piedad, which is the path straight forward over to the Mother of Mothers. And it's kind of like it's like a crumbling ruins countryside. It's surprisingly what I would call the most normal of the biomes in the beginning of the game, which is
Yep.
again which makes me think it's more do this at the beginning, right? You don't have to, but it almost implies that it wants you. And then you get to eventually, after some difficult traversal and exploration, you get to Ten Piedad, which is what we'll call the first boss in this instance. And what an
And just
introduction!
oh god.
It's
So
so
Ten
cool.
Piedad is pretty much laying on a throne with a statue. It's like a fake throne, if you will, a stone just kind of cobbled together. We've all done as kids, put things together and make our own throne type of thing.
Yep.
And one of the statues that the throne's made out of, when you walk into the room, he just kind of gets pissed off that you're there, rips the head off the statue and whips it at your feet.
Yep.
And then roars at you. And
Yeah,
to
and
give
this
you an
is
idea,
this,
like that,
tree beast monster.
I think the best way to describe it is like a combination of a demon and plant with the body of a human and a skeletal head of a goat.
You know what the best way I would describe it is to people who understand what I'm talking about? It is painfully look the cleric beast.
Yeah,
And
that kind of makes sense.
I think Ten Piedad looks a lot like the cleric beast, and he acts a lot like the cleric beast. And he's pretty easy.
And yeah, he's not difficult by any means. Well, first time players probably yes, but like any game, once you get used to it, you start getting good at. Right?
Yeah, you give him a bit of a slice. He's got a lot of really easy tells. I think what can he really do? Like he does the whole punch the thing in the ground and brings up a bunch of like tree roots out of the ground for you. And
yep, and a lot of these bosses have multiple phases. So well, they might have similar damaging moves and same tells. They could be enhanced. So Ten Piedad, when he slams into the ground at the beginning, first half of the match, it'll only bring up 3 on either side, little trees, sprouts, if you will, that can do damage to you. But more past half his health gone, it'll spread out to like 6, for example. And and most of them start getting a bit faster too.
Yep. But he goes down pretty easy, in which you are awarded with your very first holy humiliation, which is
Yes.
just a trip. You essentially go to this area, which seems to be like the resting grounds of a priest or something. And then you kneel down to pray to it. You are taken to this other world, which is, I guess, like a dream state for communicating
It
with the will of the miracle.
it is actually part of the dream,
Yeah.
which we'll get more into in the spoiler cast
Yeah.
section.
And you meet this giant skull with a golden melting face. And it awards
Yes.
you with your first of the 3 holy humiliations. And then you move on to. I like going north. North is a lot of fun because it's. Now, I was thinking about this actually earlier today. Is it snow or is it ash?
It's snow.
It is. Oh, true, because the guy freezes. This is where the olive
Yes.
trees go to wither.
Yes.
Yeah. Which the guy who's trapped in the tree, who just wants the thimble of
Gemino.
olive. Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy. So yeah, kind of like the Souls games. We're comparing a lot because they do share a lot of similarities, especially in the lore and storytelling and quest setup.
Yep.
A lot of side quests that you can do. So one that we didn't talk about in the main city of Alberto, or is it Alberto
Albero.
or Albero?
No tea.
Sorry, no T.
No tea.
There's the Kisser of Wounds, otherwise known as the hospital, for a lot of the people who have suffered wounds in the world or suffered disease-like symptoms and are on the brink of dying. And you can bring them different herbs and remedies that you find out in the world and start saving people. And the more people that you save, the more the town kind of grows. And it doesn't seem like there's much purpose to it until later on when the church there opens, which is just a micro church. We'll call it in comparison to the rest of the game. And that is where you can drop some of your Tears of Atonement to.
Oh yeah, we haven't
And
talked about currency.
no, Tears of
Yes.
Atonement are the currency of the game. So everything that you kill, you get Tears of Atonement, and then you can send those in for blessings, essentially currency.
Yeah.
So, and then you get rewards, which we won't talk about right now, for donating so much. But then you also need those Tears of Atonement for gaining level ups, or not level ups, but different
there's no
abilities.
levels in
And
this game.
there's no levels, no, but
Yeah.
different abilities that you can get.
There's different abilities, and then you'll also run into NPCs who might sell you things or upgrade things for you for some
Yep.
tiers and some maybe other items that you'll find along the way.
Yep. So
Then-
yeah, you come across this guy, Gemino, and he's just kind of like, he's in like this metal cage and he can't move away from one of the trees, like near the beginning of it. And he gives you like a thimble, and he just wants what is it he wants? Just like
so
olive
he
oil?
wants so there's this oil that they use up at the church at the top of the mountain, and it's scalding oil, and he's basically doomed to a frozen fate, but he wants this oil so he can at least feel a small bit of warmth before the cold eventually overtakes him. And I think you get there, you give it to him, you leave, you come back, he's dead, and he's got like the frozen olive charm for you.
Yep.
Or maybe the frozen olive is another item for an NPC. I can't remember, but
It's a frozen olive.
he gives you a frozen olive, yes, and it has some significance. Everything has significance somehow in this game. And moving on, you make your way up to the top, and this was a really cool boss fight. That's Our Lady of the Charred Visage.
Yes.
And
And the whole story, like she was in a massive accident, but she was one of the holy ones that was trusted by Escobar or something like that. I'm trying to remember the exact story, but
they coated her face in gold.
yeah, half her face is covered in gold and part of her brain's shown.
Yeah, she's a little charred. She is of the charred visage, and she has a charred visage. And she's a pretty easy boss fight as well, I found.
Oh, I know what it was. So she was worshipped because of her beauty. And when the fanaticism became too much, she dunked her head in boiling
in the
oil.
boiling oil, yes.
And when the miracle noticed this act of contrition, blessed her with a face that would be smoldering eternally. So she was then worshipped for being something from the miracle. Anyways.
Yes, it's basically if you've been given some kind of torturous effect from the miracle, everyone's just like, oh, this is a holy person.
Yeah.
So
So
yes,
regardless of she couldn't get away.
You defeat her and her giant laser hands, and oh,
So that makes sense
wild.
why you get the contrition.
Yep. Yep. You get your
Humiliation.
second holy wound, and then if you're like Josh, you go last, or like me, you go first into the sewers. Which there's a little bit more to going to the sewers than just. Oh wait, no. Sewers is its own thing, but you can branch off and go into the mountains, which take you over to Hondo, which is the giant upside down bell.
Yes.
Oh.
So which is an area where you gotta unshackle the bell and let it fall, and then that brings you into the next area, which is the Grievous. Oh, what's it called?
Grievous Ascent.
Grievous Ascent,
Yeah.
which is where you will eventually get to Tre Angustius.
I think this is a really cool
I'm bad
boss.
with this kind of names.
I know you hate this, but I really liked this boss because something we haven't mentioned, and it is also one of those things that's just the many things the penitent does to seem like the most badass. But there's wood planks all along the side of the wall, and you'll find these wood planks in the game every now and again, and you can wall climb them. And he does it by just jumping and jabbing his sword into it.
Yeah,
just so cool.
It's pretty badass.
Yeah, and so a lot of this fight involves a lot of like wall climbing with this mechanic and fighting off these three ghostly ladies. One has like a mace, and two have spears. And it's a 3-on-1 fight, and it's a constant moving platform fight, which is all signs of things that are very frustrating. But I don't know. I think it's just that really badass wall climb. I think is. Just makes the fight for me.
I mean, it is a good fight, but it's one of my least favorite fights. We'll get into some of my more favorite fights later on.
It is quite frustrating, but yeah, with that, you have acquired your third holy humiliation, and
yes, which this one is. Which one do you remember?
Compunction, I think.
It might be compunction. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you are ready to approach the big bridge and enter or make your ascent at least towards the Mother of Mothers, which is this where we say, like, we've given you enough?
Before, let's talk about Esdras. So each area that you enter into, like, this is a level before the boss. Let's talk about it in video game standpoint. As you enter that door that kind of leads you toward the level before the boss, you get like a small, not cutscene, but in-game cutscene, I guess, where this guy dressed in red and gold armor and holding a mace comes running up, and he's like talking to his sister who's dead. And this is going to be important come the spoilers, but saying that, don't worry, sister, I have this essentially. I see him, I'm going to get him, I don't need your help, and I will protect the Mother of Mothers. And he's essentially the guard for the Mother of Mothers. His penance is to make sure that no one can enter. So that's why he's kind of following you to each of these holy wounds that you're going to get off the holy visages. Is it visages?
Visage. Yes.
Visage?
Visage.
Visage.
Yes, holy visage.
I'm not smart enough to replicate the language.
Words. It's actually an English word.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm still not smart enough to replicate the language.
Okay. Well,
we've talked plenty of times on this podcast how I can't English right.
You don't speak none too good. So before we start getting into the deep later part, let's let our pre-spoiler people in on some more gameplay stuff we haven't touched on.
Yeah, so there's let's start off with spells. There's spells or prayers that you can come across, and prayers. So aside from your health, you do have your quote unquote mana or fervor, as it's called, and you use that to cast spells. So one spell I usually have enabled, and I don't know about you, it's actually one of the first ones that you get. Depends on the what I'm fighting and what I'm generally around, but it's the
Laser beam?
you slam the sword into the ground, and two of these circle spinning blades come flying out of either side of you, and they follow the ground that you're on.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool.
So,
I don't think I've ever used that.
really? Oh, it is so handy because the further away it goes, the slower it moves. So if you're a decent
Oh,
way, if you have some distance, it'll hit them a lot of times and do some good damage as you're farther away.
oh, that's cool.
And
No,
then it'll disappear.
I would use there's one where I think most of them are triggered by you just slamming your sword into the ground, right? That's kind of his whole performing
Some
the
of them,
ritual
yeah.
for them. And I would use either the one that's the straightforward laser beam. I did like the one that was like the big area of effect beam that goes up, especially for getting some of those hidden things that you have to hit. Uh,
Yep.
but the one that I use the absolute most, because it is so broken, is the one you get from a rather lengthy quest line that comes later in the game that just allows you to not take damage for a period of time.
So as a quick question, and I'm gonna say the name because I don't think it's gonna spoil anything just hearing the name. Is
Yeah.
that from Cleofest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And yeah, just absolutely busted. Um, but there's just a wide variety of spells and stuff like that that you can get, and there's some other cool ones. Some of them might give you like a vampirism effect or like an attack buff or
Yep.
just really cool magic attacks. But I like the more defensive ones because I'm incredibly reckless with games like this.
Yep.
So there are
I can believe
spells.
that.
There are also all sorts of different ways that you can augment your character. The first of which being the bracelets, or not the bracelets, the rosaries.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're just little charms that can have different little buffs, and they're very minor, but they can change things just enough in your favor, like a small increase in health, or damage, or certain elemental resistances, or speed. But
There's
sometimes
so many.
so the
There's
thing that
so
I
many.
really liked about Blasphemous is like even when you tweak its gameplay, it's different enough for you to feel improvement, but it doesn't make the game feel any different at all.
Not really, no. I mean,
No.
you can give things that'll you can change up your builds essentially. Like if
Yeah.
you look at it almost like an RPG in that sense, you can change up your builds to give yourself a bit of a cutting edge, but at the same time you're still dealing with a difficulty.
Yeah, the game itself is still going to have the same challenge that it would otherwise, it's just a little bit more tailored to your preferences. As where
Yes.
then you have the much more critical buffs and debuffs. So the rosaries you only start with what, like you can equip 2, but you can
Yep.
eventually at some point equip like 8 of them on you. And you can make yourself pretty powerful in that sense. And then you have inside your sword the mea culpa, you can insert different hearts into it. And now these ones are a lot more critical, that they make much bigger difference to how you play, but they all come with a really big downside as well.
I was going to say
So
they have a pro and a con, a risk and
yeah.
reward to them.
So for example, you might do more damage when you're at low health, but you'll take more damage or something along those lines.
Yep.
And I really
Good,
like
good
that
example. Heart of Oils, which increases your sword attack. I have it up here actually. Sword attacks deal 30% more damage, but it doubles all damage taken.
Yeah. So it's
So.
it's a very interesting way to change the game in a much more drastic way.
Yes.
And then there's, of course, the mea culpa itself, which you don't level up in this game, but you can level up your sword. And this always felt really good to do.
You got me confused there.
Yeah, so there are the certain places that you can find where I think you can level up the sword 7 times. And this is when you start unlocking
Yes.
like the different sword skills, right? Because at the beginning of the game, you just have that basic 3-hit combo, but
Yep.
you'll eventually, and each time you do this, the sword does a little bit more damage, and you can usually unlock a skill of your choice. So there'd
But
be like the
that is
charge attack.
upgrading the mea culpa though.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
The sword levels up. You don't.
Right. Yes.
It's not presented as a level up, but it's the same concept.
Right.
But these are few and far between because you only get these from like these really rare statues in the world that you come across pretty much through major progression. A lot of them would be after bosses.
And some of them are hidden behind hidden walls.
Yeah.
Because that is something that this game will do. It will hide things behind walls that don't look like they should be hit.
It's got hidden walls. It's got all the best trappings of these kind of things. And yeah, the sword upgrades would be where you expand your general attacks. You end up unlocking a plunging attack. You can do like an upwards uppercut kind of thing, your dash slice, and small changes that make a big difference to the gameplay in the overall.
Yes, and each new statue that you can upgrade your mea culpa at,
Yep.
each new one that you find does increase the actual damage that it provides.
Yes. And then, of course, on the smaller scale of things, but when you get to it, you're gonna be a little surprised because it's wild visuals in this game. But of course, you can upgrade your health.
Yes, that threw me off so much. Holy crap!
No, you think boss fight, and then it's just like, oh, more health, sick. And you can upgrade your magic or your fervor, as it's called in this game. You do have a basic projectile attack, which is just that kind of boomerang of blood thing that you can do.
Which is unlocked with the mea culpa.
Yep. So, all sorts.
Were you talking of the Lady of the Six Sorrows?
Is that the one that upgrades your health?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Terrifying. And then very nice.
Yeah, it's a topless woman with 6 swords in her chest.
Did she also have more than one head?
No, just one head.
Just one head? Okay. Very graphic game. Very wonderful game.
Yes. And one sword coming out of her hand.
The only other major mechanical thing that I can think about is, I can't remember what they're called, but the things that you equip to yourselves to basically, it's for
relics.
Traversal and stuff. Yes, the relics.
Relics. Yes, and they, good example is, because you already said, for traversal and stuff, but nail uprooted from dirt, which negates all effects of mud and water. So generally, like in the sewers, if you're in knee-deep water, you are very, very sluggish. You can't jump high, you can't run fast, or run your normal speed. Or the silver lungs of Dolphos, which negates the poison mist that you'll find in the sewers.
Which I never found. I did eventually find it on a subsequent playthrough, but yeah, for the most part, I just powered through the poison, which for those who don't know, just does little bits of pip damage every second and so. Yeah. Oh, it was a very frustrating part of the game where I was like, what? This can't be right. I must be missing something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's mechanics. Are we gonna head?
Do we want to talk
about
finale? Any of the start of the side quests? And we'll finish up the side quest stuff. Like, I just want to talk about Redento.
We can talk about Redento. I love Redento.
Redento's great.
Yeah, he's just,
so you
Mr.
first find this guy out. He's
okay.
So you find him right before Yondo, which is the upside down bell place.
Yep.
And he doesn't know how to cross a thing because he's on his own journey. He's having his own adventure. And this guy is an old man, and to show his penance and his faith to his Lord based on, or the miracle based on his religion, is he has a weight around his neck, so he's hunched over, and he has his hands are tied behind his back.
Yep.
And there's something on his feet.
Okay, so his whole thing is that he is on a pilgrimage, and throughout this pilgrimage, he is only allowed to look at his feet as he journeys.
Right.
Yeah, he just kind of knows that you're staying. I don't know if he could just he catches a glimpse of your foot or something. He goes, "Oh, hello, friend."
Yeah,
but
he's just so cheery.
Redento is just so happy to be suffering, but he just can't quite make it along his way. So there will be multiple points where you help Redento cross something, or maybe kill a couple enemies are in his path. There's a few different things that occur with Redento.
Oh, his feet are tied together.
Yes. So he shuffles along.
He shuffles along,
And so eventually you are trying to help him get to this statue that is basically like the head of his religion, which is, the reason why they do this particular ritual. And should we just get right to the end of his quest?
In the spoiler bit.
Okay, so remember Redento, the cheery little man who
Redento.
is forced to look at his feet as he shuffles along and you help
Because
him get by.
you find him by a door another time shortly after, which is right near the beginning actually, because the world does wrap around, and
Yep.
that's where you kind of get the Metroidvania bit. But you're just coming and helping him in some of the most ridiculous moments, and you understand why it's difficult for him.
Yeah.
But at the same, because I mean, his hands are tied behind his back, he can't look forward, and his feet are tied together. He's shuffling around.
Yeah.
But each time you help him, he does give you a rosary bead item that you can
And his
have.
are the best because his are all like agility based.
Yes.
Give you like
Which
a
makes no
faster
sense, but
dodge
yes.
or faster walking speed. Oh yeah, it's great. But
So yeah, eventually he'll get to Mother of Mothers, and that's where anything past Mother of Mothers is where it's going to be spoiler territory. So, one of the other side quests, I don't think it's in Mother of Mothers, but it's the Bride.
where was the bride? No, the bride's underneath Albero. But you would find some of the stuff that she needs in the Mother of Mothers.
Okay.
And then there's also
Yeah,
I can't remember his name, but he's the guy who upgrades your bile fast. Okay, so you walk into
yes.
this room
Oh Jesus.
and there's this giant, but he's got the face of a boy because for some reason the miracle is punishing him by de-aging him, but also punishing him by having a face grow out of his chest. And it is the most...
Nacimiento.
Oh yeah, that's a name.
Nacimiento.
That's a pronunciation.
That's
for a
it. That's
name.
his name.
I'm
Yeah,
not even going to try to tackle that.
No, I try my
yeah.
best.
He figures he can serve the miracle by, hopefully by helping you out on your penance. He will...
He's trying to reduce his sentence. His whole torture.
Yeah, and it just gets worse and worse. Game. Oh my god, it's one of the most disturbing parts of this fucking game.
Based on some of his dialogue, though, I feel like he was an older man.
He was, yes, and then so his face is de-aging, but
yes.
He's also just
and
got
he says straight, "This is why I look like a child now."
Yeah, a giant child.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then just this old man in his chest.
Just poking out of his chest.
Yeah, it just gets worse and worse the more he helps you.
Yeah. Yeah, he figures once he's completely helped you, he might be free of it, and the only thing that gets free is this old man who just crawls out to die and lay there, and they're just both dead now. Oh, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
With the silver, I bless the mixture that will recover your spilled blood.
Yeah, yeah.
Bring me the quicksilver.
Yeah, so I may kill this old man baby in my body.
Yes.
Oh, gross. Well, should we move on to the Mother of Mothers? We're getting well along here.
Yes, we are.
Right, so
this
spoiler
is gonna be a longer
warning
episode, I think. So, spoiler warning. We're going to go into the Mother of Mothers. We're just going to start not caring too much about what we talk about, in a sense of trying to dance around the point, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Mother of Mothers. When you enter, you come across Deo Gracias again, standing beside the knot of the three. What is it?
Knot of the three wills.
Knot of the three wills, which is essentially where the child asked for
Jesus tree.
The Jesus tree. Yeah.
Yes.
I think he's actually known as the Twisted One.
Yes.
So let's just call him the Twisted One for now.
All right.
But this is where the first miracle took place, by the grievous miracle. It tells you that now that you've entered the Mother of Mothers, you can start heading toward Escobar and take over his throne. You kind of get stopped because you need to find 3 masks to be able to use an elevator to get to the top. Stop me if I'm forgetting anything because I'm doing quick points here, just main story points.
Yeah.
Or progression rather, not even points. That's when you come across a fight with Chrysanta.
Well,
the
okay.
Route to Agony.
Before we get to her, because that's jumping right ahead, I just want to touch on the bosses to get these masks. Because the bosses are so cool. So the first one...
I was going to go back to the bosses, but yeah. Let's go to the bosses, because the bosses are fantastic.
So the first one I want to talk about, and possibly my favorite boss in the game, just because it's such a ridiculous visual, is Melicades, the exhumed Archbishop, and he's just this well-adorned skeleton pope laying down while these hands raise him up, and he just jabs at you with his pope stick. And
yes,
like he's the most it's. The visuals are so detailed, and yet he's this very comical-looking skeleton.
He's just hanging out.
Yeah, and the whole gimmick for fighting him is you whack away at the hands that are lifting him, and they just lower him down, and then you whack away at him.
Yep.
I like Melicades.
It's quite the thing.
Me happy. Yeah. What about the next one? You wanna take the floor on that one?
We talking about Exposito?
Don't like this one.
No,
this one at all.
This one is just located in the sleeping canvases. Without
Scariest
sounding
boss.
Fucked up.
Scariest
this
boss.
Is pretty fucked up. Yeah, scariest boss. So it's like a wicker man holding a young child.
A giant young child.
It's a giant young child. Yeah, absolutely. Like he's holding him under the armpits right up. And the thing is like 20 times the size of you. The child has a blindfold on and is bleeding from the eyes.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, but like the actual fight is the snake that's flying all over the place.
Yeah, so you're basically fighting the Wicker Man kind of thing, and it has a kind of a snakish form, and it seems almost like you're fighting it for the baby's amusement, but you can't forget about the baby, because if it gets too close to you, it'll just pick you up and rip you in half. And I hate it.
It will pick you up
so
like a
much.
doll. It is, and it was that execution of the penitent one that I remember seeing in the trailers. That's like, holy shit, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, no punches barred, and then eventually.
Oh, it's a wicker woman.
That makes sense.
Yes, and the snake has like a human face on it.
Yeah,
with a
that's
scorpion
the weak
tail.
Point.
And it's funny because I always thought it was like an umbilical cord, like one end of an umbilical cord.
Oh, I see that. That's even weirder.
It does make sense because there are two ends of it.
Yeah.
So,
and then
the mother of the child was burned at the stake for being a witch. That's the story behind it. And the blindfold was put on him so he wouldn't see her burn. And before she died, she asked someone to build a wicker figure in her likeness so that her son would not miss her. And it just goes downhill from there, with the miracle causing torment amongst people.
Everything about this game is so fucked up.
Yes.
In the best way possible. And then this is probably my favorite boss fight in the game. And this is
Quarries?
Kirse. Kirse returned by the flames, and he looks a lot like the penitent one, but he's got like this big fire sword, and he does these crazy teleports, and I don't know, it's just a really fun, fast, frantic fight.
He likes his fire, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and he'll do the thing where like he dives horizontally across the screen, and then there's like the waves of fire, and then the pillars up and down. I don't know, it was a really, really good fight.
It is a really fun fight.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and he is holed up in the prison, and okay, so I feel like something we've been missing out on with this is just the little moments that occur in the Mother of Mothers. So, for example, all right, let's take it back to our good pal Redento. He's dead now.
He's dead now, and
he's dead.
It's so bad because he finally gets to his statue to finish his penance, and he doesn't hear his God.
Yeah.
And he's there crying, and what has done wrong? What have I done wrong? And all this kind of thing. And all the little toes, stone toes that he's given you, if you put them all on your rosary bead, the statue will move and he will thank you one last time and say thank you so much and all this kind of stuff and whatnot. If you leave the room, all you will hear is a scream. And you go back and he's laying on the floor dead.
Yep. Poor Regento.
It's like, oh,
yep.
Okay.
He died. One of my favorite moments in the entirety of this game is just a few...
Bong.
Yeah. Just a few rooms to the side where Redento dies. You walk in and you are suddenly greeted with this giant bell to the face.
Not even that. Like, you're walking along, there's enemies that kind of leap, so you're kind of like jumping, hitting them, and then you just like hear this wind. And it's like, okay. Then all of a sudden this giant bell that takes up more than the screen just flies by, hits all the enemies that are in the air, and you pretty much die right from it and get sent right across the room.
And the best part is I'm never even mad when it happens, just because it's so funny. No. It just sends you flying.
Oh my god, you could be in like the most stressful part of the game, looking for a save point or whatever. You just can't help but laugh.
Also, for as frustrating as Spike floors can be, it's always kind of funny when the penitent one lands in spikes, because it's just ugh.
Yeah, spikes are instant death.
Yep.
So we'll say that.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
He's just dead now. Like,
yep.
No drama. Just
I told
silence.
you I'm dead.
Yep. So, that's some of the fun stuff. But yeah, you defeat Kirsay. You get yourself the last mask, and then you head up to the rooftops. Is it the rooftops, or is it just like, I don't know if it's like a big balcony?
It's the rooftops, yeah.
It seems like
it's like the rooftops up to the final congregation spot.
And the view of Custodia in the background is gorgeous.
It is, because like Dark Souls, you can see places that you've been. It's great. And this is where you come to fight Chrysanta of the Rapt Agony, who, from the very beginning, she gave you your first kneeling. And she's there to protect Escobar.
And give you your second, and however many it takes. And it will probably take a few with this fight.
She could be a bitch. She can hurt.
Honestly, the first time I got to this boss, I was not willing to let myself give up, but I was genuinely at a point where I'm like, I don't think I can do this.
Yes. And
you have to have that parry down with this game. And not only that, you have to... it is just the most intense boss fight.
So one thing that I found helped me is there's it's either a relic or a rosary bead that you can wear that lets you parry from the back.
Yeah.
So that helps out a lot, because she will warp from one side to the other doing dashes across the screen.
Well,
if you have your parry, it's perfect.
So something we actually haven't mentioned about this game, and it's handful of jank. For as much as I love this game, it has the odd time where things don't work as quite as well. This is a finely polished game, don't get me wrong, but there's been a couple times where I've just been stuck floating beside a ladder. Or an enemy is just stuck there, and I can't...
I've had the enemy stuck there. I haven't been stuck on a floating ladder or something.
I think it was like when I was climbing a ladder, and one of those like jumping guys that are in the bell room, they jumped up and hit me while I was on the ladder, and just left me stuck in like the falling pose.
Oh, really?
And the thing with Chrysanta, I don't know if this is supposed to be a mechanic, but there's some times when you do that parry, like she can still attack through it.
I don't know.
Yeah, I found it depend on where I did the parry or how soon it was when she would do her like really quick strike, but there would be times where she would still get through the parry and do damage to me, which on the Castlevania mode made it way harder than it already was.
Yeah, that would do it. I mean, she's not an easy fight.
No, she's not an easy fight.
Especially the DLC version, which we'll get to here shortly.
Yes, but pre-DLC, you finally overcome Chrysanta, and before you can lay the finishing blow, she gets away.
She tells you to essentially kill her. We've bested her, and you just go ham on her, and she fucks right off.
Yeah, she just can't. She
like,
can't
flies
quite
away.
accept death, and so it's like okay.
No.
And then you ascend to the peak of the Mother of Mothers, to Escobar's throne room, to where the man himself waits for you. That creepy red-skinned Pope.
Yes, the Crimson Skin Escobar.
The first son of the miracle.
Yes. His Holiness Escobar, sorry.
Yes.
So you beat him. He has two phases, so once you beat him, after a bit of dialogue, of course, we're skipping that bit. We don't want to give everything away.
First phase is the Pope, second phase is the Nope. He's the Pope of Nope.
So when you... Yeah, he kind of looks like the Pope in his first phase.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what they were going for, right?
I think so.
He is his holiness, after all.
Yes. So once you deplete his health bar, anyways, he brings in a wave of ash. And this is when you fight the last son of the miracle, which is like his true crimson form inside a giant metal suit.
Which looks quite similar to yours, but much creepier.
It looks more like Pope hat instead of pointed hat.
Yeah.
And you've seen this a few times because there's been cutscenes with him speaking to you throughout the entire game.
I did not catch until that boss fight, which I guess was the point.
Yeah. What did you think of this fight?
Honestly, kind of disappointing.
Especially after Chrysanta.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's a lot like the Sigma fight from the first Mega Man X. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a bad thing, but it was kind of a tedious fight. The whole thing is he has his face cased in with this helmet mask. And there is this dagger floating around with this eyeball in it. You gotta attack the eyeball dagger while dodging all sorts of attacks. And once you've attacked that enough, his face place will open up. You'll get a couple platforms you can jump up to, and then you gotta whack away at his face. But I found that sometimes the platforms were a little inconsistent with their timing and how long they would stay, and the opening that you would have. And it wasn't hard enough to be as frustrating as it was. Its difficulties
felt more frustrating than skill-based.
Yeah, it was more tedious than challenging, which was kind of disappointing.
It was fine.
Yeah. But like you said, compared to the Chrysanta fight, yeah, Chrysanta felt like a real final boss comparatively. And yeah, so that's you defeat Escobar, his crimson face melts inside that armor, and he turns into a skeleton, to which you are finally left confronting the mountain of ash, and at the very top of it, Escobar's turned throne. And
so when you run up right after Escobar's fight and the last son of the miracle, you go past the original throne room to where the throne now sits upon that pile of ash. Deo Gracias is there saying that your penance has come to an end. You must go sit on the throne, and you go running up and you sink right into the ash.
And so was his fate all along. And Deo Gracias just pulls up your helmet out of the ash and just hucks it onto a pile of these helmets of all the others that failed before.
He wasn't it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's ending A, the bad one.
Yes, the bad one. So ending B, there are confessor statues all around Custodia.
So before we do go into that, just a standard disclaimer for people who aren't familiar with Metroidvanias. More often than not, they'll have a meh ending and then a 100% completion ending, which is what this is.
Kind of, because you don't even have to 100% it, right?
No, but it always has that, extra steps, right?
The true ending, if you will.
Yeah.
Which this has more than just this one.
Yep.
Which we'll get to because it's DLC. There's confessor statues, and there's a pure holy bead that you can attach to your rosary. Now, every time that you die, you leave behind a guilt fragment that you can go and collect, and you will retrieve some of, because it doesn't take in traditional Souls fashion, it does not take all of your Tears of Atonement or the currency of the game. And so you can get what you failed. It does, until you collect that guilt fragment, you cannot be at full health and you cannot be at full fervor.
The
So
fervor
it's kind of
one
important
is the
to-
real damaging one, especially when you're doing
Yes.
magic mode. Oh my god, is that ever a penalty?
Oh, it would hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So these confessor statues will actually remove, if you pray to them and confess your guilt to them, they will remove your guilt fragments in the world. Now, you can also break them. And if you have turned that holy bead, the pure bead, into a bead of sin, I think it's called.
It's
Bead of
wrapped
guilt?
in guilt, yes.
Yes, you essentially die with it
called
equipped 3 times.
It's called the weight of true guilt.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's the thorn.
Is it the thorn?
That's on the yeah, because the thorn's on the mea culpa.
Mm.
You break the statue and a little portal thing appears and you can go in there and gives you like a little challenge. And when you complete the challenge, you essentially absorb all the guilt that statue was prayed to.
Yeah, there's one in each area.
So-
It's almost like you're going around collecting all of the guilt in the land. Well, that's precisely what you're doing.
That's
actually.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, and thinking about it, so the allegory is very clearly the whole, Jesus died for our sins thing. It's basically that, but way better.
Yep. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, the mea culpa was spawned because of the guilt of the land.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So the penitent one, his whole thing is just becoming the embodiment of all of humanity's guilt.
Yes. So once you destroy all those confessor statues and you have the what was it called?
The weight of true guilt.
The weight of true guilt.
Yes. It will feed.
Once you have that, you fight Escobar, and then you climb the Mountain of Ash, to which this time, with all the guilt weighing down, you are risen up, because that is what the miracle wished. And you sit down on the throne, and you pierce the mea culpa into your stomach and die, to which roots start forming from your blood becomes sticky, and you become an embodiment of the guilt of Custodia as a tree. Just like the knot.
The
wicked one.
The twisted one.
The twisted one.
Tree
yeah.
Jesus.
Tree Jesus.
Yeah, you
So-
essentially take his place. And this is the thing that I found really cool. And now, context for people, this was the good ending for the longest time. And,
Yes.
Okay, so
Until the last DLC.
So how I interpret it as, you died and essentially freed the world of all of its guilt, right? But your sacrifice was not taken the way that it was supposed to be taken, and you are worshipped in the name of the miracle anyway, and none of it mattered.
In a sense,
It was almost
'Cause,
like
yeah,
the people got
it
the wrong
was-
message from what you did.
well, they didn't stop sinning,
Yeah.
but also, which we'll get into when we get into the DLC talk, there's a reason, like, the miracle didn't want sinning to stop.
Oh, no.
Um,
There is much more to the grievous miracle than just...
Yes.
Yeah.
So, after credits, it's actually shown that Chrysanta pulls the mea culpa out of your stomach, out of your tree form, saying that this is not the right penance. So it's considered an act of blasphemous, if you will.
Yes, it is the most blasphemous act. And then we are waiting for what would assume to be a sequel, but would actually be later DLC. But before we get to that DLC, side quest, we've got some skeletons to murder.
Yes.
Yeah, so this didn't actually affect the ending, but this kind of went into... It was pretty lore heavy, but it was almost like lore that sat along to the side that was just really interesting.
Yes.
Because it was
and
another
honestly,
example
I
of
can't
the
think
miracle, right?
Yes. It was like the true people who were kind of shunned. They used to be the ones that, and then Escobar kind of hopped in, they made the church instead of listening to the Monacitas.
Oh, that's what they used to carry the Twisted One on his throne
Yes.
around to all of the people. And then,
Yes.
eventually the Twisted One was placed at the heart of the Mother of Mothers. So these Amanecitas, as they are called, long dead, sealed away even, they were almost like the true guardians, or not even guardians, but like prophets of the Twisted One, you could say. And you gotta go kill them, and they're just really fun boss fights.
And they will only rise up if you find the guy who will what does he say?
Wouldst thou make the bronze sing?
Yes, the bronze sing.
Oh,
And this guy is friggin' creepy.
He's creepy,
He has
but
like
he's
a trumpet.
Nice. A trumpet
He
that's
is
like
nice,
grafted to his forearm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
everything in this game's so creepy and weird looking. I love it.
it's one could say blasphemous.
It is blasphemous. There was 3 DLC packs. I remember now.
Yes, Miriam.
Yeah, so wacky side quest B. This game got a crossover with Bloodstained.
So before we get into that, I will say, one thing: there's an Easter egg room.
Oh yes, that's right. I was actually going to say this is where we can, before we get to this big true ending, we can talk about just some neat blasphemous things like Easter eggs and stuff.
Yes. So speaking of Easter eggs, Elden Ring. Have you found the Blasphemous Blade?
No, but when I do want to respec my build so I can use it, just because that's really cool. And it is. It was the fact that
given
they called
because
it
of this game.
Yeah, and the fact that they called it the Blasphemous Blade instead of the Mea Culpa. I mean, I'd rather it was called the Mea Culpa, but I get it. But just the fact that
it's giving credit where credit's due, right?
But the fact that this little indie gem was it was good enough to be recognized by the people that it took such inspiration from, I think that's really cool.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, and then there's the room of references, if you will.
Yes. There's a Shovel Knight.
Is there a Hollow Knight?
I think there's a Hollow Knight.
There's a Hotline Miami.
Okay, maybe. You know what? I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah, find it, because it's like a room of portraits, right?
Yeah, it's really neat. And as people who are indie fans, it's just great.
But yeah, I guess... oh, you got it?
Yeah. So there's Unepic, Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
God, I do not know these other ones, but I feel like I should.
See if I can figure it out here. Easter egg room.
Yeah, just the Easter egg room.
Let's see what I can recognize in here.
Just careful doing an image search because some of them will be spoiled for number 2.
I wonder if the night is just Dark Souls. I don't know what the food is.
Rhyme, Crossing Souls, Unepic, Shovel Knight, Crusader Rising. And a sword is the protagonist from the game Maldita Castilla, another Spanish game inspired by super ghouls and ghosts.
Interesting.
Or Dragon Lair.
Oh, Matilda. I remember Matilda.
Not Matilda.
Is it not Matilda?
Maldita.
Maldita?
Yeah.
I've been saying it wrong for years. If it's the game I'm thinking of anyway, that took heavy inspiration from Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was also
Maldita.
The DLC pack where it got just random side content from Bloodstained, where it was just time trial rooms, and they were really fun and surprisingly to the second challenging.
So they were really good, the ones I did do. However, this is my biggest gripe with Blasphemous. This game was not meant for that kind of platforming.
Oh, you gotta have the amount of times mastered.
The pogo jumping in this game is horrible.
Oh, but it's like wall jumping in Super Metroid. You have to gotta do it perfectly, and even sometimes perfectly won't cut it.
No, because if it's too long, like a split second too long, the amount of times that I have done a dive bomb right into spikes, which are instant death,
Plunge attack to your doom.
This is the one thing I have not completed in this game, and I refuse to because no.
Now, I didn't complete this in the sense that I didn't find all the hidden collectibles within it, but did you find everything in the arcade version?
I don't know because I don't think there was a trophy for it.
No, I think you get a skin.
I have. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you get a different palette skin for finding all of the skulls in the random arcade game. Which, what a cool little inclusion! You just find behind a hidden
that's another
wall.
Easter egg we didn't talk about.
Yeah, just a little 8-bit version of Blasphemous to play through, and it's like 2 or 3 screens, and then you fight like an 8-bit version of, I think, the Warden of the Silent Sorrow.
Yeah.
Which also, another thing to point out, so there's this one point where you're going along and it's this silhouetted foreground and you just see the crimson background and yourself all like blacked out in silhouette walking along, and then suddenly one of these Wardens of the Silent Sorrow jumps and lands in front of you in this pitch black silhouette area and you start fighting it, and then another one shows up and it is probably one of the most badass fights in the game.
When you're fighting both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's pretty good.
It's
a good feeling.
And they're not challenging, you know this at this point, but it's one of those things that just kind of shows this is how far I've come.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, now that we've shown how far, should we get to the end of this journey?
I think we should.
All
Wounds of Eventide.
Yes.
So
remember our
this
old
DLC
pal
was
Esdras?
really good. Yes.
The guy who was following us around talking to his pretend sister who was dead?
Who we didn't actually mention. We fought the sister by herself, like her ghost
fight.
form.
Yeah.
In the base game. And in Wounds of Eventide, you can actually find her actual grave. And it turns out that the version that is talking to Esdras is not the real her. It is
the miracle.
It is a trick of the miracle.
Yes.
Giving him false advice.
Yeah, and it turns out the miracle might not be so great. Shocker.
Shocker. Perpetua, the sister, lets us know that everyone who's tried to do anything about this, something has happened to them, including her, because she was the only one that could actually withstand the force of the miracle.
They have silenced the true voice.
Yes. So she gives us like a amulet in her dead form, and we're supposed to show this to Esdras. So once we do the 3 holy wounds, we go to fight Esdras outside of the Mother of Mothers, and he says, "Hang on, what's this?" And then he starts trusting you, and then he says, "Meet me where the first where guilt first took place," something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just above the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrows. You meet him, and he ends up giving you a key, which you can bring down to the key warden, who's down in the library, which is a place that I know we haven't talked about.
It was kind of a non-area in the base game, though.
Kind of, yeah.
It was just another area you went through and fought some spookums.
Yeah, because it led to the painting area.
Yeah.
Or sorry, the library had Wicker Baby.
Was the library where Wicker Baby was?
I think so.
Interesting.
Anyways, you go bring the key to the key warden, who Esdras says this is a key that he is missing.
Yeah.
So you give it to him, and he opens up a secret passage. And inside that passage, you start pinpointing whereabouts you are, and you are at the base of the knot of the 3 wills. And inside, wrapped up inside, is another holy visage that has been blinded, had its eyes taken out. And
it's the one that didn't look away.
Yes, this is the one that did not take any shit.
Yeah.
And you are basically told that Chrysanta was the other person who knew the truth of the High Wills, and she had the power to look into the dream, which is where the High Wills actually stay, the miracle, if you will. And when she saw what she saw and knew the truth, her mind was erased and her eyes were taken from her. And this is how she became blind for the rapt agony. So her penance became to protect Escobar in Crimson form, who is also part of the grievous miracle in the dream, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yes.
So you start learning this thing. You learn a little bit, but the Holy Visage won't help you until you can get the eyes back. So the journey to the eyes go down to right underneath Albero is a what do you call him?
It's the apothecary.
The apothecary.
Yes.
And so during the entire game, you can find these collectibles, which just seem like collectibles. But
They're
after so many,
bones.
a room opens up, and I'm gonna get this name right because I feel like I have to. Because Isadora, the voice of the dead. And this is kind of neat. So you need to collect 30 bones in the game. That door opens up, and as you're getting close, you start hearing singing and stuff. And you get to this boss. This boss kicked my ass so much, but this is actually probably one of my favorite boss fights.
Oh, do it on Castlevania mode. It's insane.
No, thank you.
Absolutely
no, thank
insane. No, this was a make your palms sweat kind of boss. And
yes,
Blasphemous is reasonably challenging, but I wouldn't say it's like, aside from the Chrysanta fight, nothing too soul crushing, right? But this fight, it's I would put it up there with the Chrysanta fight, possibly even more difficult.
I'd say it's more difficult.
Yeah, it is.
At least for me.
It was a good time though. It's just and then the other DLC fight, not very difficult, but just cool.
Hang on, because I'm not done with Isadora. Because this is kind of neat. Story-wise, and when you're hearing about Isadora or the voice of the dead, and how nothing will stop the voice of the dead, this is a kind of neat little nod because it's the only boss in the game that you cannot pause for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because nothing stops the voice of the dead.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a really neat little detail.
Yes. So the other big boss, so that gets you one of the golden eyes for the fourth visage. The other one can be located in an area called Mourning and Havoc, which is like, it's almost like a bunch of wrecked ships.
Gangplank Galleon.
Like a it's a ship graveyard. But this thing is, when you first walk into the boss room, you just see like a lighthouse off to the end and like what looks like a giant ramp going up. You can't really see because it's just like a silhouette. Until that ramp starts moving and you realize, no, this is a giant fucking snake.
Yeah.
So this is Sirpes, and I like this fight a lot too.
This is a very cinematic fight. Yeah.
It is cinematic, but like it starts off simple enough. He has his movesets, things are coming out of his skin, he tries biting you, he does electricity because why not? It's a snake who has electricity.
Yep.
But then each phase, there's like 3 or 4 phases, and you get higher up into the world. And then it starts getting more and more stormy. So it gets quite cinematic in that sense. And then just when you finish the fight, it swallows you and you pop out its eye.
Yeah.
With the eye of the fourth visage.
Penitent one, finish him. Yeah, just him being more badass, doing badass things.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, with both eyes in hand, you can go back to the fourth visage. And they give you the God, I cannot say these words. Jesus Christ. Apothetic Heart of Mea Culpa. And
yes,
this is a heart for the Mea Culpa that when you enter it and then fight Chrysanta, you can destroy the chains that the invisible chains that the miracle has on her.
If I'm not mistaken, when you equip this heart, you can't unequip it ever. You essentially complete the Mea Culpa with it, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you get to Chrysanta and you do her 2 phases, she gets a full health bar again and has an ultimate fight, and she's like 10 times faster. This is where the real challenge gets.
Got a couple new attacks. I think even the music changes too. Like,
yes, more dialogue options and whatnot.
This is the real final boss.
This is a real final boss, really. Yeah. So yeah, you defeat her. You break the chains off. You go to the Kneeling Stone church. And now that she sees clearly on what everything is, she kind of guides you and says, go stop this. So then you go back to fight Escobar. You fight Escobar and the last son of the Miracle form of him, the giant metal version. And when you step on the throne, it turns into an elevator and you are transported to the dream, which is where the Miracle, the High Wills, lives.
Kind of like heaven, but not at all.
Not at all. And this is where you are faced with the true form of Escobar, who looks pretty much like a devil, if I'd say.
Kind of. He's got kind of some Baphomet vibes going on.
Yeah. And so he goes to try and stop you the entire time, and it's a scene, and then Chrysanta shows up, starts blocking his massive attacks, and then you kind of eventually defeat him. It's a very cinematic fight.
I don't think you can even lose, yeah.
You can lose, but it restarts.
Hmm.
Like it's not like going to one of the statues and restarting. You restart right at the start of the fight. Once he dies, you come up against the High Wills, the Miracle. And this is when they're saying you have this all wrong. Turns out that the Miracle, or the High Wills, sorry, were feeding off the torment and the praise, or the prayers of the people of Custodia. And they just wanted more and more power, more and more gold. And as long as they had people praying for them, they were getting it.
It's
like a giant farm factory.
Well, it's a weird vicious cycle because they were creating the pain and feeding off of the worship from that pain.
Yes.
And basically, it's, in a weird way to explain it, it is a thing that existed from nothing only out of the will of something to be worshipped.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
In layman's terms, it's a demon that feeds off of suffering.
Yes. Pretty much.
Yep.
And unfortunately, this isn't a fight.
No, this is just a really wild cutscene.
It is a really good cutscene.
Yeah.
This is where Chrysanta and the Penitent One both destroy and absolutely annihilate 3 floating heads, which is the High Wills.
Yeah, the High Wills is like these 3 faces merged into one, and they're crying golden tears. It is very much just bathed in religious symbolism. And yeah, the Penitent One just jumps up, plunges his sword into one of its faces, and pulls it down, and they just, it's kind of like the scene from Office Space where they're beating the shit out of, what is it, the record?
The printer?
The printer, that's it, yes. Yeah, they're just basically these 2 bestest buds taking out God, or what claims to be God anyway.
What is the God of the world, technically.
And with that, you have defeated the High Wills, which is...
And everything that they have done.
Which is very contradictory to the High Wills, which has sent you on your journey.
Yes. And it also means everything that they have done is now undone. So that means the mea culpa is now dissolved into nothing. The Father, or the Twisted One, dissolves as he reaches out for you as a thank you.
Free of his punishment.
The Penitent One is now laid to rest, as he is dead, as he was killed by Chrysanta originally.
Yeah, and brought to life by the will of the Miracle, which he has then killed.
Yep. So essentially he gave up his life.
Yeah.
And then the teaser for Blasphemous 2, I assume. It's out now. Haven't had a chance to touch it. I want to. I'm excited for it.
Suddenly, Sky Fetus.
Yeah. The sky goes red, and a fetus comes down from the sky in this giant weird bubble.
Yep. What could it mean?
I don't know.
And yeah, ladies and gentlemen,
I think that concludes Blasphemous.
That is Blasphemous, and
I fucking love this game.
I was just gonna say, yeah, just some final thoughts on it. So I, 3 or 4 times I've gone through this game. It is well within my top 5 or so games for my Switch. It's a tricky list. It shifts from time to time, but this is up there between like number 2 or 3. Like it's incredible game.
Yeah, I've probably beat it about 7 times, 8 times now, maybe.
Oh, it's so I can't remember.
I did 4 playthroughs back to back when I was platinuming it.
Oh, there's a lot of playthroughs, but all the same, the combat is super satisfying. It is so good. It feels so
Absolutely.
weighty. The subsystems, when it comes to like the relics and the rosaries and all that stuff, that it adds to a lot of different replay value and different.
It makes a noticeable change, but it takes away a noticeable change too. So it's different play styles. You can really tweak it to how you want to play.
And something else that I like about this game is it has skins, and the skins aren't something you get very often, so they feel like a pretty big reward when you get one.
Yes.
So
I think I have 8.
I don't know how many I
Six
have.
6 or 8.
It's like 5 or 6. And they all just make you look so cool.
Yes.
But
And you know what? After all this, like we've been minus the intro, almost 2 hours.
yeah,
Or an hour and a half on this. There's gonna be things we missed. There's things that we definitely didn't touch. The graphics, the pixel art is just so done so well. I don't like how they didn't keep the pixel cinematic for killing the high wills.
there's that, and then I haven't seen much of the sequel, but I have seen that they went with like more of an animation than a pixel animation. That does make me sad.
Which is what the killing the high wills is.
Yeah,
The whole ending of
it's
the
funny
DLC.
because I remember when it first came out, like that cutscene was done with pixels and it looked real janky, but there was a lot of charm to it as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but there are very, very few complaints that I have about this game. It is a high recommend. People put this on your wish lists. It goes on sale quite frequently for like what, $10?
Pretty cheap.
And if you are into any kind of retro side-scrolling action platformer, Metroidvania, hack and slash, genre, just play Blasphemous. You won't have a bad time.
It's a blasphemous time.
It is Blasphemous time, but
And if you don't mind gore.
yeah, that's right. This is this is an ESRB worthy game. I think it's
Yes.
if it's not rated M, it probably should be.
It is rated M.
All right,
Because
then.
there's the nudity too.
Yeah, that's fair. There's no tobacco references to my knowledge though. So there's
There's
that.
probably a hookah in there somewhere.
There's probably just something that someone would kill you with. I don't know, but
Probably.
yeah, I think I'm pretty wrapped up on Blasphemous. How about yourself?
I had a blast talking about Blasphemous, and I know we missed things, but that's all right. Some things have to be left a miracle.
Well, and not only that, I mean, at the end of the day, this is just us explaining to the people why we like this game so much.
It's just us gushing about why why we like something.
Yeah, but that said, at least
And hopefully you guys listened and enjoyed it too.
yeah, at least from myself anyway. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this more focused episode as opposed to our usual stuff. I mean, we have been talking about how we want to dive into singular games from time to time, but it's also like we just talk about whatever. So, you know.
We just have a good time doing this, and clearly we're you guys are enjoying it. So thank you.
4 more years. Happy anniversary, and thank you all from the bottom of the
1 year.
box.
This is crazy,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to blow smoke. Like we're obviously not the biggest podcast, but we certainly aren't the smallest. We started this not thinking that anyone would listen, and here we are. We're breaking our own records each time we upload an episode.
And
so
also,
genuinely from the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
for a request to anyone who is a new listener, please listen to episode 1. Just one of you. That's all I want to see.
Episode 1 has been stuck on 99 listens for 2-3 months now.
It's
hilarious.
been a year. Come on. But
yeah,
I'm-
happy optional boss anniversary.
Yes.
Thank you guys, everyone who's listened thus far, and whether you're new, whether you're old, whether you're from the future, from the recording. Thank you for checking us out.
Is that the outro?
That's pretty much the outro. You'd think after a year we'd have this under wraps. You got anything to add, Tyler?
No, I'm tired. It's been a long day. I'm gonna go eat a sandwich.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I guess that's it for us. I've been Josh. The other guy's been Tyler. You can catch us on Instagram or Twitter. We are trying to post there more often. We suck at social medias, more or less because we hate social medias.
Yep.
So necessary evil, I suppose. But we are at Optional Boss PC over there. And if we actually think of it, we will get our topics posted beforehand for you to write in. Anyways, happy 1 year. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.